Hey guys, Mars Thinking here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so we're continuing on with the Super Battle Road guides, the new stages that are coming out on Global, and we are up to stage 45, which is the Earthlings category stage. So this is another one that only has one main leader, which is the LR Krillin, but we do have quite a few sub-leaders. The Tien has a reasonably good leader skill in terms of percentage, so you know, there are some other options, but LR Krillin is a free-to-play unit, so you should really have him. He is a Prime Battle LR, so it does take a while to grind up all the medals and everything, but obviously he is the best bet for the leader for the team. So as with all the other guides, we're going to go through my top picks and some honourable mentions. If there's any units that I miss out or any aspects of a unit that I missed that I should have covered, let me know down below in the comments section. And if you find the guide helpful at all, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and let us go ahead and jump straight in. So first up, obviously, we have Krillin. He is the Earthlings category lead for 4 key and 150. Very good leader skill, especially because there's a lot of LRs on this team, so having 4 key in the leader skill is definitely beneficial, especially because some of these units don't necessarily link up the best with each other, so having some extra key in the leader skill is definitely a good thing. So he does have an AoE super on his 12 key super. He also has a medium chance to stun all of the enemies. So that is obviously super useful. He does also launch an additional super attack when facing 6 or more enemies, which is something you really only see in the World Tournament, so it's not something you're going to see here. If we look at the actual Earthlings stage for Super Battle Road, all 3 fights are against 2 enemies, so obviously that's not going to come into play at any point. But you do get an extra little bit of attack at the start of the turn when facing 2 or more enemies. He gets extra key when there's only 1 enemy. Obviously, when there's only 1 enemy left, you could go for the 18 key super, which does more damage, raises attack and defense, but obviously does not have that chance to stun. But overall, very solid unit to have on the team. He is the best leader, so definitely recommend using him as the leader over anyone else. If you don't have him, obviously the stage is going to be a little bit harder, but not necessarily impossible. So next up, as a candidate for a leader, we have the Physical Tien. He has Earthlings category 3 key and 120 to stats. He does supreme damage and greatly lowers attack, which is obviously very useful for Super Battle Road. He's got pretty decent attack and defense, as well as some bonus key. He gets extra attack when performing a super. He gives Majin Buu Saga super class allies a buff, which, you know, there's not going to be many of on this team, although there are a couple. And then he does also have a high chance to stun the attacked enemy. So even if you're not using him as a leader, there are a lot of features of his kit that will be very useful on this team. Greatly lowering attack is obviously very handy, so definitely a solid choice. Next up, we have the free-to-play Oob with his Easy A. He's a 77% lead for Earthlings. He has a medium chance to stun on his super attack, obviously very useful. He builds up defense at the start of each turn, so he's not the most ideal Super Battle Road unit. He also guards when there's a World Tournament enemy, which I don't believe any of the enemies in this particular stage are, so that is a little bit of a letdown, and there are no Goku enemies either. So honestly, Oob is probably like a last resort leader if you don't have any other Earthlings category leads, but seeing as that the main one is free to play, you probably should have. I probably wouldn't bring him on the team normally, but if he's one of the only options you have, then, you know, he's one of the only options you have. Because next up, we also have the Tien and Roshi from the anniversary. So if you're playing around the anniversary time, you should hopefully have got these guys all done then as well. They also have a 77% leader skill. They do supreme damage, they seal the enemy, and they lower attack. So very useful. They do build up their attack and defense with each attack received, but even so, they're not going to be looking crazy good defensively. These feel like a unit that you can probably put on the team as like a 3rd slot float, or they can be used for a little bit of support. They support representatives of Universe 7 for 3 key and 40% attack and defense, which of course leads into our next unit, who is probably one of the best units on the team for this run, which is of course the LR Master Roshi from the anniversary. He'll obviously get that support from the Tien and Roshi if you do bring them on the team. So he is very good. He has a 70% chance to stun on his 12 key super, so in some situations it could be worth deliberately going for that to try and get the stun. Or for the 18 key super, he obviously deals a lot more damage and he does seal as well, so both of those effects Very, very useful. He also has a built-in medium chance to dodge. He buffs Turtle School category allies, which obviously does include the Krillin, who you're probably going to be running as the leader, so very, very good. If HP is 50% or less at the start of the turn and you have 2 or more Turtle School allies on the team, then he gets the Revival ability active as well. Remember, it's another 2 units, so it's him and 2 others. The leader, both the leader Krillins, if you're running double Krillins, will count for that. So his Revival skill is obviously going to be very, very useful. That's going to be very helpful, getting that potential free heal. Essentially, you avoid dying and revive with 60% HP, so very, very good. And he also has the active skill. He does have to receive 7 or more attacks, and then there be a Turtle School ally on the same turn. So depending on where the attacks are placed, I mean, if you get a turn where there's a ton of attacks in slot 1, you could pop a defensive item and put him there and let him take a whole bunch of hits, and then potentially use the active skill as like a finisher for the fight. But you're not necessarily going to get to see this in many of the runs for Super Battle Road. So next up we have the LR Oob. He's a unit that I feel like is quite underrated. He can be very useful for Super Battle Road. He lowers attack on both of his super attacks. You also have the ability, when you drop below 40% HP, he will transform and fuse with Boo, and then you also get a nice little heal. He obviously then becomes a much more powerful unit and creates rainbow orbs, lowers attack, and then greatly lowers attack on his 18 key super, which is really, really useful. His links do change quite considerably, but if you're able to get the transformation off, he then of course links very, very well with this guy right here, who literally just got his EZA. Like, the Extreme Z area for this guy came out like a few hours before the stages come out. So if you've had the chance to do him, the Extreme Z areas don't take very long. This guy can be quite good, especially as a link partner for him. He raises attack and defense on super attack and lowers the enemy's attack. He has fairly decent base stats. Obviously, the more HP you have, the more attack and defense he has. Attacks are effective against all types when HP is 80% or more, so very good for doing a little bit of extra damage, and he does create rainbow orbs. So these two together, especially when he's transformed, are going to be very, very powerful for this team. Next up, we have the LR Hercule and Boo. They can be pretty decent. Like, after their EZA, they're an okay unit. They're not like one of the best free-to-play units in the game or anything, but they have a medium chance to stun on their 12 key super, and then they also have Mega Colossal, but raises attack and defense by 50% for 3 turns on their 18 key, so you can get a couple of stacks out of them, which is pretty good. They are quite RNG related, because they have a great chance of key 7 and attack 77%, which if they don't get, then obviously they're not going to do a crazy amount of damage. They're also only getting all of their defense for 3 turns from the start of the fight, and then they also get a chance to dodge after receiving an attack. So in the first couple of turns, they can be quite good defensively, but then they do drop off a little bit. They also have attacked enemies attack minus 22% for 3 turns as part of their passive, so a nice little bit of attack lowering thrown in there as well. So they definitely can be useful, but I feel like they fit more into that slot of being the final unit on the team. Like, if you're making your team and you just don't really have anyone else for that 6th and final slot, that's probably the only time I would consider putting them on the team. So next up, we have the INT Hercule. He's a bit of a Super Battle Road god. He's been really good in some of the older stages. He has a 50% chance to dodge. He has a bunch of damage reduction. Like, the lower your HP, the more damage reduction he has, which is obviously really, really useful, because if you're close to death, his damage reduction is going to be very high. He also has a medium chance to stun on his super attack, so he just can be very, very useful overall. So next up, we have Videl. So of course, Videl, you know, that unit, lover or hater, very decent, especially in Super Battle Road. You can put her in slot 1, get that chance to dodge. If she dodges and receives an attack in slot 1, then obviously she gets all of her full buffs, including effective against all types and a bunch of extra attack. She launches an additional super attack as the first or second attacker in the turn. So she's raising attack, especially if you are getting her unit super. You can't actually, I don't think you can even get her unit super, because none of the Gohans are on Earthlings. And I don't think there's any great Saiyamen on here either. So you can't get her unit super. but she does still raise attack, raises defense to 1 turn, does immense damage, so she's able to dish out a pretty decent amount of damage. You're not going to be able to use her active skill either, but in Super Battle Road, you probably don't want to be sacrificing that 20% defense for a little bit of extra offense, so I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Her links, which are people's biggest issues of her in general, obviously she doesn't fit super well on the team, but she is going to share a few links with some of the other units. But, I mean, she's very powerful even without having a bunch of links active anyway, so she's definitely a solid option. Next up we have the Physical Launch. Obviously she's one of those units that like transforms straight away, so she becomes the blonde-haired launch. She does supreme damage to the enemy, greatly lowers attack on super, which is really good. She gets 2 additionals, which have a high chance to become a super. She has a high chance to crit for 6 turns. She seals the attacking enemy super attack when there is another Peppy Gauss ally in the same turn. So obviously you could run her together with the Videl, and then that would work out really nicely. She gets off a whole bunch of attacks. Like, you know, if you get off 3 supers in 1 turn, she's greatly lowering that enemy's attack 3 times. So there's a severe nerf to the amount of damage that they're going to be able to do to you. The only downside is, like, her own defense is not particularly crazy, but she's definitely a solid option for this as well. And then finally, I thought I'd include this guy, the recent awakening from the World Tournament of the Physical Jacky Chan. He's not too bad. His passive is not crazy, like 20% attack and defense on turn 1 at the start. Then he gets 150% when performing a super, so he's definitely not a slot 1 unit. He does buff Kamehameha category allies, so he's probably really only worth using on the team if you are using the LR Roshi. He's going to be really good support for him. They do share quite a few links as well, but he's, again, probably another unit that I would only bring if you're really struggling to fill that final slot on the team. So looking back at the Earthlings roster, I mean, like Tien and Chaozu, super outdated, just not very good. Same with Yamcha and Poir. The new Mercenary Tao is an interesting choice, although a lot of people are probably only going to have him at 55%, and he doesn't have a lot of crazy good link partners on this team. Mai, we've mentioned in previous guides already. She's actually quite good. 70% chance to stun on super can be very useful, but defensively she's not very powerful, so you've got to be careful about that. This Tech Krillin actually definitely warrants a honorable mention on the team. He's a very good support unit for the team, as well as being a reasonably solid unit by himself, so probably should have highlighted him. He's very good. He's been featured on a few banners recently on Global as well, so he's a very, very solid option to bring on the team. And then obviously Global doesn't have the easy A's for some of these Peppy Gals like the INT Videl, who would have potentially been a good option. But that is something that we know is coming up very soon. So if you're not able to beat the stage straight away, that's something that you can consider for the future. This guy's on there, although Saiyaman, I think, do they transform? You might be able to get away with using these guys to get Videl's active skill actually, but I don't know if they're really worth bringing on the team because they're not a particularly strong unit just to try and get Videl's active skill. So there you go. That is the top picks and honorable mentions for the Earthlings stage. Like I said at the beginning, if you think I missed out someone that I should have included here, or if we didn't cover any of the units in enough detail, let me know down below in the comments section, and let me know what your team build is going to look like for this stage. So that's going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.